Hi, my name is Bob Gazzale. I'm in the economics department, and I'm going to be talking about running experiments in the classroom. The reason I run experiments is because in economics we develop models, and frequently what looks good on paper might not be digestible to the students. Students might not believe what the models that we develop. One concept that students find sort of magical is the invisible hand. We can show graphically, we can have supply and we can have demand, and there exists a price that equates supply and demand. Economists take it on faith that given a free market, the market will find this price that equates supply and demand. Perhaps my students don't believe that this price will magically appear. So what I do is I make some students sellers. They have a cost of producing some item. I make some students buyers. They have some demand for this item, and I just let them go. And students get up in the front of the class, and they call out prices at which they're willing to sell, prices at which they're willing to buy, and sure enough, within one or two rounds, a price appears, an equilibrium price appears, where all students who want to sell have sold, all students who want to buy have bought. I open up the envelope, which I had sealed before class, saying what the equilibrium price will be, and sure enough, that's the price that happens. So here we have a concept that might appear sort of magical, but which happens. And I think students are sort of impressed. Another kind of experiment that I run is one in which we're developing a really complicated model. And so, for example, we might have a model that says, a firm enters with the probability of 7/8. And of course, students are very skeptical of this sort of model. So what I do is, prior to introducing the model, I have students, interact in this environment. And sure enough, students act in the way that the model says that they're going to act. And so then when we do the model in detail, and students say, well, why would a firm do that? I can then say, well, why did you do that? And sure enough, the students are able to equate, well, okay, I didn't want to enter all the time, and I didn't want the other person to know that I was never going to enter. So sure enough, this turns out to be some sort of, this is a good representation of what I did. The final kind of experiment that I run is one where I want students to really appreciate conflicting incentives. And one of my favorite experiments to run is a variant of the prisoner's dilemma, where we look at instances where people have to decide whether or not to contribute to the public good or to act in a more self-interested manner. We can talk beforehand or afterhand about it being a dominant strategy to act self-interestedly, but everyone is better off if we act pro-socially. And students would then say, well, I might act pro-socially anyway. But when you put the students in an actual environment where they're acting pro-socially and other people in the same environment are acting greedily, all of a sudden the dilemma becomes very real for them. And what we see is some students, sure enough, always contribute to the public good, because that's what they ought to do. But some students sort of learn to act very greedily. They've contributed to the public good, they see that other people are free riding off their contributions, and they can see in a very real way why this is a dilemma, why, even though we'd all be better off if we acted in a pro-social manner in this particular environment, it's very tough to sustain that outcome, partially because of this conflicting incentives and these additional feelings that you feel after you've acted pro-socially and other people haven't. So those are just a few of the kinds of experiments that I run. I run experiments in my introductory class, in my advanced in my advanced industrial organization class, and in my senior seminar. And I find it to be an effective way to get students to actually live the models that we develop.